Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Marquette Golden Eagles Dynasty on NCAA Football 14. In the last episode, we suffered a big loss in the bowl game against Washington State where we fell 35-21, and we dropped all the way in the rankings from number 10 all the way down to number 23 to end the season. Before we jump into the offseason, of course, this is the offseason episode. We're going to review a few things here before we officially advance. So Greg Walker, of course, our passing leader, passed all but 5 of our passes this season, one on a fake punt there from Eddie Stevens, but 2,452 yards with 18 touchdowns to 13 interceptions, and like 7 of those interceptions were combined in 2 games. So otherwise, very clean season from him, although the highest interceptions he's had by quite a wide margin. Still the most passing yards, though, with the most pass attempts. And next season, we expect big things from Walker, now going to be a fourth-year starter with a very experienced team around him. Mario McBride led the team in rushing in his first season after transferring from Northwestern. Week to week, he was very inconsistent, but when he was on, he was definitely the best back on the roster. Dusty Alexander, probably more consistent, as McBride did lead with 8 touchdowns. Alexander had 4, and Alexander did miss a couple weeks, which kind of shorted his workload, only 106 rushing attempts on the year compared to 210 last year. And last year, 883 yards, which is the most we've ever had so far from a running back. But going into next year, of course, we're going to mix these guys in. McBride, Alexander, and Craig Jones here, who had solid numbers in more of a limited role. Although last year, the 5.7 yards per carry was just absurd. And he still did have our longest rush, ripped off a 73-yarder earlier in the year. Now at receiving, Josh Terry steps onto campus as a JUCO and ties Kevin Coleman with 43 receptions, although Terry, much more yards per reception, with 14.2, led our team with 614 receiving yards and tied for the lead in receiving touchdowns here with Jack Mason. And I think Mason, half of those came in like the first or second game. Really stepped it up receiving-wise in more of a starting role with the departure of Malcolm Graham last year. 11.8 yards per catch and more of a blocking guy, but he proved that he can be a reliable option in the passing game, although there was that one game where he dropped a couple passing touchdowns, maybe that Notre Dame game, which really hurt us. So Kevin Coleman was solid all year, 12 yards per catch, 518 on the season. Doug Childress, he's going to be the only skill position player we lose. I mean, unless you count Jeff Harris at fullback, we're only set to lose 3 or 4 starters on each side of the ball. So like I said, very experienced going into next year. And I think year 6 might be the season where we actually solidify ourselves as a top 10 program in college football. We flirted with that status this year, but we couldn't finish in the bowl game. And next year, I'm really hoping we can get a more legitimate bowl bid, maybe the Orange Bowl or beyond. On the offensive line, Sean Murphy really stepped it up. I mean, he's been solid all series since being a freshman starter back in year 2. One of our highest profiled recruits that we brought in back in that year 1 recruiting class. And it's kind of bittersweet that he's moving on. Randy Heideman as well. We've had these two on the left side of the offensive line for the past 3 seasons. And the right side will stay intact to what we had this year, but still it's going to be huge to replace these guys. Very solid on that left side. Justin Hill, he's been very inconsistent in pass protection, even 7-7 pancakes to sacks. I mean, we do roll to the right side, so that'll open that up for him to allow more sacks, but still one of the highest ranked players on the roster at 87 overall. I think he is tied with Greg Walker right now as our highest rated player, so hopefully as a senior he can just kind of reach his peak and just be that dominant player we thought we were getting back when we signed him in year 3, I believe that was. And now Josh Terry up here, going to be a slot receiver, going to be a fullback next year for us, maybe even a running back at times. We're going to try and get more creative and really implement him on how we had planned to. And then Bobby Marcus, 3 pancakes, no sacks at center, the Michigan State transfer. Richard Walker, the weakest link on our offensive line at right guard. You would think he has that spot next season, but it's not a guarantee. On defense, linebackers Bobby Price and Chris Carter led the team with 73 and 72 tackles respectively. We'll get them back as 2 of the 3 starters in our linebacking core return. 20 tackles for loss for Antonio Carr led the way, and he was a Lombardi finalist and a first-team All-American. We'll check out All-Americans here shortly. Jerry Jones and Mike Johnson, each with 15 tackles for loss. 13 for Jake Witherspoon, his first season as a starter. And Witherspoon and Antonio Carr, they're going to be the guys we depend upon next year to kind of take the anchors on that defensive line and keep that dominance going. Mark Henry at 8, Price Carter at 7, Kenny Johnson our top corner here at 6 tackles for loss. Robert Williamson, then freshman Troy Walker with 5. Really like his capabilities as a run stopper. Carl led with sacks and 10. Jerry Jones, a DN from the year 1 recruiting class, going to end his career with 10 sacks, 7 of which came this year. He's always been solid in a rotational role, and we'll never forget that scoop and score he had back in year 3 against Ohio when we won 10-3. That was our only touchdown of the day. Witherspoon and Mike Johnson here at 6. Mike Johnson has been probably the most consistent player on defense the last 2 years. 14 sacks over his career with 36 tackles for loss. And we'll never forget his interception back in year 2 in his first career start. 2 sacks for Walker and Price. Mark Henry had 1. Interceptions. We had like 5 or 6 in our first 3 games, and then like 1 or 2 the rest of the way. Just really weird how that panned out. Williamson had 2 in the first, or 3. All 3 of his came in the first 2 games. He had 2 going back to week 1. I think 1 a pick 6. Aaron Clark had 2 picks this year. He'll be a starting corner next year alongside Robert Williamson. And Kenny Johnson, our starting corner from our recruiting class back in year 1. 2 interceptions, 1 for a pick 6. Castillo made 9 out of 10 field goals with a long of 41, but I think I mentioned last episode or the episode before, we're going to move him to punter now that we've brought in the top kicker in the nation in Hunter Kraft, the number 1 kicker, 3-star, and he's going to stay in the state of Wisconsin. Castillo's been solid, missing only 2 kicks in the past 2 years, but just really limits us with range, so I think his accuracy can be better utilized in the punting game, where we're going to be losing Eddie Stevens, Steady Eddie. It's been real fun playing with him. The most punts of his career came this season. That's kind of surprising. 14 down inside the 20, along of 50, and we had a bunch inside the 5 with Eddie Stevens this year. A really fun punting season. I mean, I know that's something you probably don't expect. A net of 35.7, a big jump from previous seasons, so we'll definitely take that. And thank you for your service, Eddie Stevens. We really appreciate you, and we had a lot of fun kicking the football with you. Alexander Williamson, each with 11 kick returns. Alexander a little bit better. And Kevin Davis was our primary punt returner. Now just browse through all these bowl results and work our way towards the national championship, which featured number 1 Army and number 2 South Carolina. Penn State won their bowl game. They beat us 45-7 going back a couple of years in our bowl game. Really humbled us after that one, but we did come back strong to beat UCLA in our next bowl game. Boise State 56-32 over Oregon as the Broncos finished number 6. Florida State in the Military Bowl. They haven't really been doing too hot over the past years. And Kansas wins the Holiday Bowl against UCLA 35-28. So our former defensive coordinator, Herbert Wright, a very strong season there with the Jayhawks in his first season as a head coach. We're going to schedule them next season. Virginia Tech beats BYU. North Carolina, we beat them earlier in the season. They win the Athletic Bowl over Temple 45-10. Purdue, they beat Ohio State earlier in the season, I believe, and now they beat Texas. So the Boilermakers are kind of on the ascend here. And then here the Kraft Fight Hunger Bowl, 35-21, and we threw 4 interceptions, and that's never going to do it. Tough loss, and that's one I want to forget about, but one that kind of fuels the fire going into year 6. West Virginia loses to Nebraska in their bowl game. We beat a ranked Mountaineers team earlier in the season. Alabama only 7-6, kind of falling apart there in Tuscaloosa based on their standards. Mississippi State, a big win over Louisiana Tech. Clemson against Florida, that's a fun one in the Chick-fil-A Bowl. And we are going to schedule Clemson next year. They have the year 1, number 1 overall recruit, Bobby Baker, at quarterback. And I think he's going to be a redshirt senior next year, unless he maybe declares for the NFL draft. Ohio State, a 4-loss season as they lose here to Ole Miss in their bowl game. And I say it all the time, but coming into this season, Ohio State was 59-1. And now they go 9-4 in the next 13. Wisconsin beats LSU. We lost to the Badgers earlier this year in the war for Wisconsin. Northwestern, a very good season, finishing top 10. Lost in the Big Ten championship, but beat Auburn in a bowl game. We had a nice win over Auburn earlier. We also beat Washington, who loses to Michigan here in the Rose Bowl. 8-6 record. You don't see that much in college football. Oklahoma gets the Fiesta Bowl over Navy. USC, they were stacked coming into the season. I think 99's all over the roster. And they lose to Missouri in the Sugar Bowl as the Tigers finished number 2 on the season. Notre Dame, we just lost to them. And we pretty much played them for a spot in the Orange Bowl as they take down Miami. That looked like to be a very good game. Texas A&M gets the Cotton Bowl. And we should be getting down here to the national championship as Army defeats South Carolina 45-24 for their first natty since I think like 1945, something like that. Looks like we were tied going into halftime, 21-21, and then Army just broke it open, outscoring South Carolina 24-3 in the second half. Scored 2 early touchdowns, a late one, and then a field goal in the fourth, kind of to seal the deal. They only threw the ball 12 times, which you would expect from this triple option attack. They have N. Brown and C. Brown in the backfield, both of whom went for over 100. N. Brown just one short of 200. And C. Brown, we'll go Chris Brown and Neil Brown. Why not? Chris Brown here had 4 touchdowns. Neil Brown had 2. 8.6 yards per carry. Just absurd rushing numbers here from the Black Knights. Any turnovers on defense. Felta had 4 tackles for loss, a sack and a half. Morse had an interception. Connor Mitch finished second in the Heisman voting. Didn't really have a good game here. David Williams, 143 on the ground, 7.1 yards per rush, but they kind of needed to go more towards the passing game as they fell apart in this one. They also had the Outland and Remington winner, Bryce King, at center, but they had no sacks and no interceptions. They did have 2 forced fumbles, but they didn't corral either of them, so that kind of proved to be the difference. South Carolina's defense just not really making the impact plays. So I guess we'll just scroll down the top 25 All-Americans and award winners and then move into the offseason. So Army, of course, will finish at number 1, and we saw Missouri at number 2. They just missed out on a spot in the SEC championship, and they actually were the only team prior to the national championship to defeat South Carolina, and a tough SEC development there. Notre Dame at 3, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Boise State, Michigan at 7, USC, Georgia Tech, and Northwestern finishes number 10. A very good season there from the Wildcats. Miami, TCU, Wisconsin, Hawaii. Hawaii at 12-1. What a great season from the Warriors. Big win in their bowl game, 49-7. Clemson, Nebraska, Ohio State, Central Michigan, the Chippewas. They lost back in week 2 against Cincinnati by a touchdown, but won every other game. Navy, San Diego State, Texas A&M, North Carolina, Marquette. We fall from 9-4, and I feel like we would have finished as a top 10 team if we won our bowl game. Tough stretch there, tough break against Washington State, Michigan State, and then Ole Miss rounding us out this season. Now we'll go through All-Americans, starting with Kevin Olson, and then Devion Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner from Michigan. Tremendous year from him. 2,200 yards, 7.1 yards per rush with 25 rushing touchdowns. Also won the Walter Camp and the Walker Award. Ernest Alexander here for Navy, the other running back. Samaje Grant, Lawrence Jackson, the receivers, with Ray Hudson from Old Dominion as the tight end. South Carolina with 3 linemen here on the first team, including Bryce King, who I mentioned as the Remington and Outland Award winner, with Derek Edwards from Central Michigan and Thomas Ortiz from Oklahoma. And then we see Antonio Carr, first team All-American. Congrats to Antonio, and we hope for a strong senior season. He just missed out on the Lombardi Award here to Jordan Watson, who ended up leading the nation in sacks from San Diego State. At D-tackle, there's Charles Walker and Kyle Breedlove. Nathan Tillman from Central Michigan. So 2 first-team All-Americans from the Chippewas. What a special year they had. Tim Garrison, Jim Palmer at linebacker as well, with Andrew Hayes from Troy. Marquise Dunlap, who won the Thorpe and the Bednarik Award. He's another corner. Josh Andrews from Miami. Nam Luis Frug from Houston, with Ben Grogan, Al Miles, and Derek Cruz, the special teamers. And then on the second team, Connor Mitch, who just suffered a tough loss there in the Natty, with C.J. Bradshaw. It's Nehemiah Brown, not Neil Brown. So correction there. Nehemiah Brown finishes second team All-American with over 2,000 yards, 6.8 yards per rush, and 21 receiving touchdowns. Tommy Miller from Oklahoma also up there. Anthony Culp just came off a pretty good game there in the Natty. Jake Rowe at tight end. Jacob Alsadek, Quentin Jones, Khalil Rogers, one of those 99 overalls I mentioned for the Trojans, along with Michael Colbert and Brian Landry from Notre Dame rounding out the O-line. Randy Carter makes the second team. We saw him earlier in the season, finishes with 11.5 sacks with 26 tackles for loss. Matt Tyson from Northwestern. Also Lavelle Elliott. So 2 second-team defensive linemen All-Americans here for the Wildcats. Kelsey Griffin from South Carolina, Dominic Gibbs, Navy. A freshman here on the second team, Roddy Dahl from Louisiana Tech, 25 tackles for loss. I think 89 tackles overall, 4.5 sacks, a pick, 4 pass deflections. Bobby Price here on the second team from Marquette. Love to see that. 70 tackles, 70 for loss, 2 sacks. DJ Dean from Arkansas. I think he had 10 interceptions. Yep, 10 interceptions from the Razorbacks. Paul Foster from Oregon State. Justin Malone, Virginia Tech. Patrick Cole, the freshman from Tennessee, makes the second team. He picked us off earlier in the season. We had highlighted that he was their lowest starting player on defense, and he ended up picking us off on the next series of downs. Corey Rogers from FAU, a freshman here at punter Mark Rodriguez for Hawaii, so a big part of their success. Had a 74-yard punt this season, and Kenny Miller rounding out the second team. Now freshman, here's Michael Williams. We saw him earlier, standout freshman there for West Virginia. Ryan Larson, we almost recruited him last year out of Kenosha, Wisconsin. A very late signee, had a low lock percentage going into the final weeks, but then ended up with the Buckeyes. Miami, 2 receivers here for the Hurricanes as freshmen All-Americans. A few Big Ten schools here have offensive linemen. Steven Gutierrez from Michigan at 81 overall. 82 overall, Jim Palmer, although redshirt, but 9.5 sacks as a freshman. Of course, Roddy Dahl from Louisiana Tech will make the squad. And a bunch of high overall freshmen here. Really hoping we're going to start bringing some of these guys in. Jay Slaughter, freshman kicker, goes to Louisiana Tech. Hits 16 out of 18 with a 52-yarder. We have not hit beyond 45 so far in this series. Or maybe we had a 45 or 45-yarder with Dylan Mackey back in year 3. I can't really remember. Connor Mitch wins the Maxwell. Devion Smith, the Walter Camp, of course. Also the Heisman Trophy winner. Marquise Dunlap wins the Bednarik. And Antonio Carr was down here at 6. Nagurski goes to Jordan Watson. The O'Brien goes to Tyler Brugman. Led the nation by over 1,000 yards in passing yards, 49-37. Just a smidge under 5,000 with 45 touchdowns, breaking the Washington State single-season record set just a year ago by Austin Apodaca. It's only 7 interceptions. What a tremendous season there under Mike Leach's air raid attack. Devion Smith gets the Walker. Samaje Grant wins the Blitnikoff with 1,928 yards, 21 touchdowns. That is absurd production from a receiver. 17.4 yards per catch. Wow. The Mackey goes to Jeremiah Gaines of SMU. Just barely finishes over 1,000 yards with 10 touchdowns. The Outland goes to Bryce King, along with the Remington, the center for South Carolina. One of the best O-lines in the nation. The Lombardi goes to Jordan Watson, who just barely edges out Antonio Carr. I guess Watson was definitely way more productive overall, 86 tackles to just 36 for Carr. 20 tackles for loss for Carr to 41 for Watson, 4 forced fumbles. So Watson was absolutely phenomenal. Garrison wins the Best Linebacker Award to Thorpe. To Dunlap, Groza goes to Matt Wogan. And Eddie Stevens, not even a semifinalist for the Ray Guy Award. What are we doing? Doug McClellan from Notre Dame wins that one. And Best Returner goes to Kenny Miller of Wyoming. All right, folks, we can now officially put a bow on the Year 5 season. That's a wrap. We end at 9-4, number 23 in the nation. And that's 3 straight 9-4 seasons. Of course, the goal now next season is to win double-digit games, get into a prominent bowl game, and kind of work our way up the college football ladder as we've continued to do. So we'll start here at the coaching carousel. And is Lance Leipold going to stay at Marquette, or will he get offered one of these top jobs? And it looks like the Georgia job is the top one. Mark Richt gets fired, and Leipold does get the offer here to coach the Bulldogs down there in Athens, but I think we'll just stay with our current contract, of course, and continue to build this Marquette program. So Robert Prince, after a 12-1 season with Hawaii, gets the job as the Georgia head coach. Now Stanford, David Shaw gets fired. And actually Herbert Wright, our old defensive coordinator, under consideration for this job. Would be a crazy bump up. And he does get hired there at Stanford. So Herbert Wright, 2 years ago, was our defensive coordinator, goes to Kansas, 8-5 season with a bowl win, and now he's the guy at Stanford. So I said we were going to maybe schedule Kansas. I think Stanford is now going to be the team we look to schedule. Maybe not this season, maybe next season. Give him a year to build it there. Josh Conklin at Arkansas. Now Kansas has to fill that vacancy, and they go with Scott Frost, who comes over from Toledo. So I was wondering if Bobby Goss would maybe get a head coaching job, but it doesn't look like he's under consideration for any of these positions. Troy Calhoun from Air Force to California. Rocky Long retires from San Diego State. They go Vance Bedford, the defensive coordinator from the national championship winning Army. Air Force has to replace Troy Calhoun. They go with Brian Knorr. They just promote their defensive coordinator. Love to see them staying in-house. Now, who's taking the Hawaii job? Ivan Jasper, the offensive coordinator from Navy, with the Hawaii alma mater, returns there. Maryland, new head coach is going to be Carl Pelini. Comes over from FAU. Fresno State extends Tim DeRuyter. Mark Donofrio goes to NC State. And I'm still not seeing Bobby Goss, so usually I would just kind of sim at this point. And it looks like Bobby Goss is going to... Oh, no, now he's starting to get some consideration. So, not even Bobby Goss, Matt Campbell. He was a one-year defensive coordinator with us. Bowling Green was considering him, but they ended up going with Marty English instead. Toledo, they go with Al Borges, offensive coordinator from Michigan. Okay, so we don't have any considerations there for Miami of Ohio. Nor do we do for Wyoming. So I think our coordinators might stay the same. I don't think, unless they try and get a better coordinator spot, maybe Michigan, Bobby Goss, nope. Head coach at Middle Tennessee State, Clay Helton. DC for Notre Dame. Hey, it looks like our guys are going to stand pat, so simming the rest of this stage. As I'm pretty sure, I thought Bobby Goss would get a job look after Herbert Wright did last year, but just not the case. So another year of coaching staff continuity, but as I said earlier in the season, it kind of seemed like Goss and Leipold had a little falling out there, but it looks like they're going to work together for year 6 now. 6 seasons as our head coach and offensive coordinator has stayed the same, and Matt Campbell, really like him as our defensive coordinator, a previous head coach. So it's official. I went ahead and checked, and our coaching staff is going to remain intact. So really the biggest headline is Robert Prince goes to Georgia after a 12-1 season with Hawaii, and our former defensive coordinator Herbert Wright goes to Stanford after a successful year with the Jayhawks. So we're here at players leaving, and I am kind of expecting a transfer or two, wanting to leave the program due to lack of playing time, but we'll see. Derek Perkins. We even played him. He was going to be an instrumental piece. He was actually probably going to be our slot corner this year. And he wants to transfer to Western Kentucky. We had him in our dime set, and we tried to give him a bunch of snaps. Medium persuasion chance, so that's pretty good. Definitely we'll play in more than 9 games. And now high persuasion chance. So I think we can get him 40 tackles if he's in our nickel set. So we'll promise him more than 40 tackles. And he talked to his parents, and they told him to stay at Marquette. So, wow. I thought usually when a player decides on transferring, they're pretty much gone, I feel like, in this game. So, really good we keep him. That was a little dramatic. Now we'll cycle through positions. Players leaving. Jeff Harris, thank you for your service as our fullback. You've done a tremendous job blocking. And as a short yardage guy, Doug Childress, very good receiving option over the past 2 seasons since transferring as a JUCO. And we'll have to replace him in the receiving core. Randy Heidemann, a 3-year starter at left tackle. Definitely going to miss his presence, along with Sean Murphy, a 4-year starter on the offensive line. Going to miss those guys on the left side. Jerry Jones is graduating, 10 sacks over his career. A big piece from our year 1 recruiting class, along with Mike Johnson. Going to finish with 14 sacks, 13 tackles for loss. At left outside linebacker, Randy Carpenter never really had the production or reserve guy throughout his 5-year career with Marquette. Like I mentioned earlier in the series, he's the only player to make it here to year 5 from our inaugural roster going back to year 1. So Randy Carpenter, a very special player, despite not being the most active or productive player. Kenny Johnson, our top corner signee from that year 1 class, a good career on the outside as a starting corner. I think the past 3 seasons, Kevin Davis came in, the 2-year starter as a JUCO, along with Doug Childress. And then at punter, Eddie Stevens, I'm going to miss him the most probably of any of these players. He's moving on. Probably not to the NFL, but maybe he gets a shot in one of the spring football leagues down the line. So as we just outlined, we're really not losing too many players. So really not many spots to fill, hence, kind of a smaller recruiting class. As I've stressed in past episodes, I don't really like to, over-recruit, just bring in an excess of players. I'd rather keep it to the guys we kind of target and bring in. So we're here at transfer requests, and I don't expect any at this point in the Dynasty. In my experience, I've never really gotten transfer requests past like year 2, year 3. Now going into year 6, a better roster. I'm not expecting it, but we will see. And we do strike out here in the transfer portal. But although I am I'm very glad for we also no draft requests or no draft results rather. I'm very happy with the transfer haul we've been able to bring in throughout this series. The first 3 years we brought in 5 players, all of whom are solid contributors, good starters at some point, and we only lost 1 player, that being Desi Watkins back in year 1, who transferred over to Louisville. And now we are going to advance here to recruiting. And Derek Perkins, we convinced him to stay. That's huge. That's a huge swing there. Already kind of thin at corner, especially in the secondary just overall. So he's going to be one of our top guys moving forward. At this point, we'll just kind of review our class a little bit, see who we've brought in so far. Matt Robinson, a 1-star fullback. He went up +5 after scouting. I love players who grow. 80 impact, 87 acceleration, although just 70 speed, 68 agility. So not really athletic option there at fullback. Obviously a blocking guy. That 80 impact was the huge enticement. And going to be a redshirt, but maybe finds a spot in the offense moving forward. Daryl Simmons, a strong safety, and a Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Not really that fast at just 83 speed, but I like the acceleration and agility. Good zone, good hit power. Pursuit, not the best, nor is the play rec, but he does have good press. Doug Doherty, Milwaukee kid, 2-star. He went up +6 after scouting. A good athlete already at 89 speed, 92 acceleration, 81 agility, so you like that, especially from a 2-star guy. The coverage ratings at 75 man, 73 zone, pretty good, although the press very low, but does have to get better. He's going to be a redshirt. Dustin Lee, our first signee out of Canada, went down -7, and he got the bust tag. I like the power move at 77, also the block shed there, but really nothing else of note. And I think his spot we're going to look to replace maybe next season, bringing an extra D tackle. Kyle Romero, one of 2 receivers we were targeting in this class, 6'3", 201, Illinois, 88 speed, 82 acceleration, agility at 79, route running at 70, catching at 69, but the spec catch and catch in traffic and release all pretty low. Not sure if he really has a spot as a freshman. Andrew Thomas, probably going to move him back to free safety after we missed out on Stephen Goodman to Northwestern. 92 speed, agility, acceleration in the low 80s, but you love the zone there at 83, 76 man, and good hit power there as a free safety potentially. Marlon Atkinson, a 3-star center out of Milwaukee, one of 2 Milwaukee guys we brought in. Very good pass blocker at 77, run block impact at low 70, but a pretty good athlete there with the 67 speed, 89 acceleration, probably a starting center for us down the line. Taylor Ryan, a D-end out of Iowa City, Iowa, 6'3", 241 with good power move, good block shed there in the mid to high 70s. Good tackle, the play rec low, 68 speed, not bad for a D-end. Jared Luke, one of the top running backs in the nation, 14th on the overall board from out of Greenfield, Wisconsin. 88 speed, 90 acceleration. You like that combo with 82 agility, 62 strength. Not bad for a running back. Looks like he has a spin, a juke there in the mid to high 70s with good elusiveness. And 64 route running. You like that from a running back. James Suggs, the only linebacker we're going to bring in this class. We're going to probably move one of our linebackers currently on the roster to D-end here shortly. 6'4", 215, Muskegon Heights, Michigan. We beat out the Spartans for Suggs. 65 overall with 83 speed, which we kind of need in our linebacking core. Really lacks speed right now. Good block shedding traits to start, especially with that 76 block shed. Although the coverage ratings need a lot of work. Tommy Washington, a JUCO athlete, and we missed out on our top overall target this recruiting cycle in Tyson Williams, who went to Wisconsin, the number 10 tight end in the nation. So Tommy Washington, with that size at 6'5", 227, I was kind of hoping he would translate to tight end, but with the 45 strength. Probably not, but kind of just a luxury signing, kind of like Josh Terry last year. Didn't necessarily need to bring him in, but we did, and we found a spot for him. So being that Washington's going to come in as a junior, maybe we throw him at tight end, even if his overall does go down to like 68, 67. We'll see. If he has blocking, that's obviously going to be huge. But with the 82 route running, 74 catching, I would really like to use him as a tight end weapon along there with Mason, Craig Watkins. So with Washington, probably more of a receiver, but we'll see what he translates there at tight end. Hunter Kraft, the top kicker in the nation, comes to Marquette. And we actually can scout him further, but we're not going to. We already have that 89 kick power, and that's going to be huge for our special teams, for our offense finishing drives. So that would bring us now to the main part of the offseason recruiting. So Roberson, we don't really prioritize at this point. We're hoping he would maybe commit in season, but at this point, we really just, I think, go for Roger Cook and Shane Jansen and just stick to our two-player approach that's really been our offseason strategy throughout the course of this series. I mean, Joe Barnes we would really like to bring in, along with Albert Brown, who's super close to signing. Chris Davis, I mean, he might sign on his own, hopefully. We have a big lead there over Georgia Tech. But Roger Cook, and it's a big race. I mean, Michigan is even still in on him, so a four-team race really at this point. Cincinnati currently leading. And we gained a lot. We locked him, or we unlocked ourselves, which gave us a big boost. I think we'll just go up to maybe 5,000 for him, or maybe in the 4,000s. And he might be a day one starter for us, to be honest. Maybe we just throw him at left tackle after losing Randy Heidemann. We do have Kent, I think Rick Kent, who was an athlete that we put at offensive tackle. I'm not sure if he would really beat out Cook at this point. So go 5,000 on him. Shane Jansen, we'd really like to bring him in. He was a midseason addition, and we've only really been battling with Texas. Lost 50 last week. So yeah, Texas really jumped in on him. So I'm trying to figure out what would be best. Like Brown, I don't even know if we really have to pour much into him. Like Virginia would have to go really, really heavy on Albert Brown. And like I mentioned with I think Campbell down here, or Washington, Tommy Washington, he was another luxury addition. I kind of envision Albert Brown being that like Josh Terry type guy, can play in the slot, maybe can play running back. 81 route running, 88 carrying. Looks to be a very good athlete at his size. So I don't think we really need to go in on him. Joe Barnes, I really liked as a receiver. We missed out on Kevin Evans, who actually ended up going to Eastern Michigan, I believe. So Joe Barnes was a late addition. Definitely projects best as a receiver at 6'3", 211. Has beat carrying, though. 82 ball carrier vision, 80 route running. Has some defensive traits, but probably not a clear spot. So maybe we like try and throw 2,000 or so in on him and then mix Cook and Jansen. I don't think we're going to throw any at Brown. I mean, like I said, a luxury addition to the board. We'll kind of see if he commits on his own. I'm definitely more worried about Cook, so I don't mind going the full 5,000 there on Cook. Bringing Jansen to like the mid to high 4,500 or so. And then giving Barnes the difference. Although that does not check out mathematically at all. Yikes. Ole Miss is really the only other team in on him, and they're dropping a lot. They dropped 6'10". So I don't even think we really have to go too heavy on Barnes. And we did already get a receiver in this class. Definitely prioritize. I think in terms of like position units, offensive line and secondary are probably the top two that I tend to try and equip with better caliber players. I feel like you could always kind of find, skill like a running back or receiver. Maybe not studs at those spots, but I feel like generally you can find very good players. So maybe we'll have to bring Cook down to, we do get a pretty good bonus on him at plus 325. Maybe we'll go 440. Bring Jansen up to like 38. And what does that leave us with? I'll bump Cook up a little bit to 46. I think Barnes, like at 1,500, I think we might be good. And then we'll give the rest to Cook here. So this is what we're going to roll with. Not really, a necessary method to the madness, but there really isn't in this offseason recruiting. So we're going to roll with this. Hope we can bring in Cook, Jansen, Barnes. Maybe Brown commits on his own, although I'm not giving up hope for that. And these D tackles, Jeff Thomas, Andrew Holland, were late additions, but at this point we got on the train too late. Neither of these guys are probably going to end up committing. Kind of wanted to bring them in to compensate for the poor signee that we had in Dustin Lee, but that's something we're probably going to have to address next season. So that's what we're going to roll with. Currently I have 12 signees, trying to get 3 or 4 more here. But Roger Cook, Jansen, those are the main guys that we're hoping for. So really hoping they commit to come play in Milwaukee. I think the last time I checked, Marquette had the 60th ranked class, something like that. Last year, I think we ended at 24, which was a huge boost from, I think, 71 the year prior. This year, I don't expect our class to rank too high nationally just because we didn't end up signing too many players, as I mentioned earlier. And look at that. We got him. We even get that D tackle, Jeff Thomas. Actually, so we missed that on. I just saw all the yellow. I saw all the illuminated players. We get Roger Cook, but we do miss out on Joe Barnes and Shane Jansen, which is kind of a bummer. Should have bumped it up more on Jansen, but we'll be all right there in the secondary. Barnes would have been a very good receiver, but, I mean, Brown could play in that spot. And we also have Washington, that athlete we brought in. So Jansen does go to Texas. Barnes goes to Kentucky. They were like 2,000 behind us, so they must have threw most of their eggs into that basket. Chris Davis goes to UCLA, not even Georgia Tech. So I like the unpredictability there. Jeff Thomas, we got a D tackle. And we didn't even throw any more points into him, and his bar was super low in the red. He must have been like a 30% lock, not even. We get Ryan Jock, so maybe that does kind of compensate for not getting Goodman. Jock, we didn't even really talk about him. A very good, I think, box safety type guy with decent athleticism. So 4 signees. We got our top guy there at Roger Cook. We were in on him the whole season, and I think he's going to be a stud offensive tackle for us. Jonathan Roberson goes to NIU like we kind of expected. Devin Henry was a good corner prospect, but we really didn't need any more DBs of that caliber, although we do get Ryan Jock, so I mean kind of interchangeable there. Andrew Holland, the other DT, goes to Miami of Ohio, and now we'll look how we ranked nationally. So now we're here on signing day. Let's take a look at where our class ranked. I think the computer did sign a bunch of players for us also, so we are going to have to make some cuts. So Marquette ends at 32 nationally, 4 4-stars, 11 3-stars, 2 2-stars, 2 1-star. Jared Luke, I think probably the top overall player. I think he was like 140 on the national board. We got the top kicker in the nation. I think Cook was a top 10 offensive tackle. Albert Brown, a stud athlete, running back, receiver type guy. And Jeff Thomas was actually a 4-star D tackle. I think the 14th ranked D tackle. Dustin Lee, the bust D tackle. Probably not going to have a spot on this team. And Taylor Ryan at DN, James Suggs at linebacker, Simmons at safety, Kyle Romero, one of 2 receivers likely in this class. After we move on to our athletes over, Ryan Jock, free safety. Garrett Marshall was a linebacker we did have on our board, but we ended up removing him. And they do give him to us, so we're probably going to end up cutting him. Washington, that JUCO athlete. Then Doug Doherty, Robinson, that fullback. And then they signed 2 more players here for us. Waylon Douglas was a JUCO athlete, probably a D-end. And they ended up signing 1 more D-end for us as well. So let's see who finished above us. South Carolina, Boise State, Northwestern. Had a 5-star in this class along with Stephen Goodman, who we talked about, one of our highly rated players that we missed out on. A bunch of Big Ten teams here. USC at 20, Florida, Michigan. Kentucky ends at 17. They got Barnes, that athlete, probably a receiver. Vandy up here, very high for the Commodores at 16. Clemson, UCLA, LSU, Washington, Nebraska at 10. Texas, Georgia. So that head coach coming over from Hawaii, of course, does inherit a very good recruiting class there with the Bulldogs. Mississippi State, Texas A&M, Alabama, so pretty much all SEC until we get to Ohio State. Then Tennessee, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma, of course, with the number 1 recruiting class. Now we are here at position changes, probably my favorite aspect of this offseason. As I always say, I love just, mixing things up, seeing, filling holes, and seeing what fits. So as you can see, Hunter Kraft debuts as our number 3 player on the roster, although after training, he will bump down a little bit, but 83 overall. He actually went up +2, I think. 79 kick accuracy, 70 speed, good for a kicker with 68 agility, 70 acceleration. Better athlete than some of our linebackers. All right, now we'll go position by position. Of course, Greg Walker will be the fourth-year starter at quarterback. 43 touchdown passes, 6,644 passing yards, 67% completion over his career. And then Jason Smith will take over as the quarterback as a redshirt sophomore. And he's a dynamic athlete with 89 speed, 90 acceleration, 79 agility. Decent arm thus far, and it's only going to get better as we go along here. So we're going to have a dynamic option at quarterback following Greg Walker. And I think with two seniors, we're going to have to bring in a quarterback in this next recruiting class. At running back, we do get Jared Luke. And I thought maybe Michael James or Sam Manning would look to transfer out, but they stayed. So we have 4 juniors, 1 senior in our backfield. So probably going to have to bring in at least one more running back just to equip us for the future. Because 2 years from now, we're going to be losing 4 running backs in Jones, Manning, James, and McBride. Now at fullback, we have Josh Terry. And he's a 78 overall running back, a 79 overall wide receiver. But we like him at fullback. He's going to grow a lot there. 72 strength, decent blocking. And Matt Robinson, our backup at this point. And our receiving core is going to be pretty weak, I guess, but after training should get a big bump up, especially if we move one of those athletes over here. So Kenneth Pope looks to be the top guy. Kevin Coleman has more production over his career, though. Senior from our year 2 recruiting class, along with Greg Walker. Dylan Anderson had a few catches this year, or only 2. Going to be our 3rd or 4th option there. Kyle Romero, true freshman. Quincy Bonner had a few catches last year. 3, I think those all came in one game for 55, had a long of 34. Going to get him involved. And then CJ Saria was a 4-star, one of the first 2 4-stars we signed, but he was a bust at only 62 overall, and we might just cut him outright. Jack Mason, Watkins, and Mike George at JUCO just to kind of fill a spot there at tight end. Didn't really see the field too much. And they do put Roger Cook at left tackle, 76 overall, 85 pass block, 79 run block, 74 impact. The impact a little low. You would like the strength to be a little bit better, but you love that starting frame at 6'3", 305 out of Grand Ledge, Michigan. And I think he might be the starter over Rick Kent here at left tackle. Left guard, definitely need to get a guy over there. We're going to have Jared Turner, 61. Bobby Marcus is going to start at center the next 2 seasons. And there's Chase Taylor. Remember him, the 1-star we added late to the board last year. Went up like plus 13 to a 69. Richard Walker at right guard. Justin Hill at right tackle. Of course, going to be a 4-year starter there with Todd Kemp, who we really liked last year, in line for a starting spot here soon maybe. So Kent, I don't really know if he's a guard. Probably Marquise Cole here. Going to be a redshirt junior, maybe in line for his first year as a starter. I think a very good run blocker on that side. Although Chase Taylor might be in line for a starting spot as well at 69 overall. And we do like Marlon Atkinson as our backup center going forward. Going to kind of groom him to take over after Bobby Marcus. And actually, I think we will move Chase Taylor to guard. I kind of like a guy with higher awareness here at center. You know, they got to be the leader here on the offensive line. So I think we'll groom Marlon Atkinson, as I said, to take over for Bobby Marcus. A year or 2 down the line, we'll move Chase Taylor over to left guard, even though he does drop to a 66. We'll kind of have him and Marquise Cole compete for this spot, although Cole probably the starter now, a redshirt junior, so his 4th year with the team, and maybe he'll be a 2-year starter to finish his career. Richard Walker at right guard, a better pass blocker. We like that on the right side, as that's the side we tend to roll out to. Bobby Marcus at center, and Roger Cook, more than likely going to be a 4-year starter at left tackle. We'll have some stability there. And then at right tackle, Justin Hill, probably going to go up to like a 90, 92 overall. We'll start at right tackle. So we do have a couple weaknesses here, especially on the interior, which we're not really accustomed to. But our tackle spots and our center should be very strong. And hopefully Richard Walker and Marquise Cole get a good bump after training. So Antonio Carr, of course, going to be the left end. We have Taylor Ryan. Should we put him on right end? So we're going to be a little weak at defensive end. Like I said, I didn't want to move one of these linebackers over. Probably not Fisher, but he does go up 1 overall point. I think it was Edwards, so we wanted to move over to end. And he does go up 1 overall point as well. So only 73 speed. We don't really need that at linebacker with 54 agility, 73 strength. So one of our stronger linebackers. I kind of like him playing up on the line. I think he did have some block shed traits as well. 74 block shed. Where are the power? 70 finesse, 68 power move. So not the best there, but you know, after another training cycle, especially specialized at D end, I think he'll go up quite a bit there, and so we kind of groom for the future. So Carr and Jed Brigham probably going to be our starting D ends. Brigham going to be a sophomore now. Didn't really play last year. We got him in on some snaps, but no stats recorded. Bunch of D tackles here. So Jeff Thomas ends up being a 68 overall. Only 73 strength, but the block shed good at 77 power, 75 finesse and block shed with 75 play rec, 77 hit power. So a bunch of good traits here from Jeff Thomas out of Superior, Wisconsin, a 4-star. He did go down 2, though, to a 68. But Witherspoon obviously going to be the guy. And I think Walker as well. They also have John Daniels here, going to be a redshirt junior. But Thomas, I think we like over Daniels, so I think we'll mix in Jeff Thomas. Jay Hill. Totally forgot about Jay Hill. I think he was actually a bust at D tackle, ended up redshirting him. And then Dustin Lee, probably going to get cut. We have a bunch of D tackles all of a sudden. So we got to move a guy to right end, and that's going to be Edwards, I believe. Who do we have at right outside linebacker? Garrett Marshall was someone maybe I thought would translate to end. Stays pat at a 67, but this was one of the computer signings, so I think we're just going to end up cutting him. Robert Weber, we like him at, or Robert Weber, I guess is how you pronounce that. James Suggs, I think we'll keep here at right outside linebacker, which would give us 4 in that spot. We'll go ahead and move Edwards now to right end. 3 middle linebackers, only 1 left outside linebacker. So, of course, Carter is going to be a starter again in the middle. And Bobby Price will start at right outside linebacker. Should we put Leak over on the left side? Or Weber? I really like Weber with that 85 speed, 95 acceleration. I don't know if we should put him in the middle. So, we're going to have Carter for 2 more years. We'll only have Price 1 more year. And I think we want Weber to take over after Price. And then I think, yeah, Leak we put on the left side. So Leak is 70. A 74 there from Carter and a 77 from Price. So I do like our linebacking core returning 2 starters. And we mainly run a nickel and dime package for the most part. Or 4-2-5. So we usually only have 2 linebackers on the field. So that kind of nixes Leak. Although we will get him out there in some packages, of course. And I would just like to put one more guy in the middle. We'll just put Suggs there for now, even though he's probably a redshirt, which will give us Price and Weber. Weber, I do want to get on the field as well. And that's what we'll roll with at linebacker. At corner, see, wow, Derek Perkins is a lot lower than I thought he was, honestly. I forgot about Mike Carroll, but we actually prefer Perkins than Carroll on the field. Carroll's a very good special teamer. Going to be a redshirt junior. Andrew Thomas, I said, maybe move at safety, but we missed out on Shane Jansen at corner, so we don't really need to move him to safety, I don't think. A little weak at this spot right now. Mark Henry, though, he was phenomenal last year. Dominic Green, forgot about this guy, only 77 speed, so I don't really want to get him on the field. Maybe just a special teamer. Jason Taylor, a good strong safety, very high hit power. So Williamson and Clark will definitely be our starting corners on the outside. I think we'll have Perkins in the slot. And Andrew Thomas will be waiting in the wings because Clark and Williamson will be gone. And then Thomas and Perkins, I think, will be our starters from that point on. Although Carroll will definitely get some time as well next year as a 5th-year senior. Then we have James Williams, a redshirt from last year, and Doug Doherty, who's going to redshirt this year. Omar Wilson, I do project him to be the starter at free safety. And here's Ryan Jacques, only an 80 speed. I think that's why we were kind of out on him. 91 acceleration, though. Very good hit power, good pursuit. But my free safeties I like with speed and good coverage. So he's more of a strong safety where we have a bunch of guys already. So I don't know if we ever even ended up offering Jacques. The game just signed him for us, so I think we might end up cutting him, to be honest. That I like his traits, but that 80 speed is just not going to cut it. We can't be doing that anymore at this point with the teams we're set to face, as this program gets better. So do we move Thomas to free safety for now? I think we do move him to free safety, give us another guy at that spot. Although Wilson is going to be the guy this season, but I think Thomas can work his way onto the field. And we'll just roll with that for now with some guys ahead of him. But we are going to be losing Williamson, Clark, Carroll soon. So maybe at that point we'll just bring Thomas back to corner. But with Omar Wilson, only a 68 will go up obviously after training. He and Thomas are kind of evenly matched for the most part. So I think we'll mix them in at those spots, although Wilson will get the bulk of the snaps. Mark Henry again will be the starter at strong safety. Jason Taylor will mix in, and Daryl Simmons maybe a red shirt. And then Hunter Kraft at kicker. We're going to move Castillo over to punter. And we're very excited about Hunter Kraft, the top kicker in the nation, which brings us now to the athletes. So Tommy Washington was the guy I said I really would have liked to put at tight end. We'll just scroll down the line here and see if he has any blocking. I'm not expecting it, but that would be very nice. And he doesn't. 40, 40, and then 45. So not really a tight end guy. Albert Brown here. He goes up to a 73. So Tommy Washington, 90 speed, 93 jumping. Definitely want that. Receiving the ball there with good acceleration. Not a defensive guy. 82 route running, 74 catch. What would he be at tight end, though? So he's a 75 receiver and a 49 overall tight end. So, yeah, that's not going to work. I think we do just throw him at receiver, but in some formation subs, maybe we can put him in the tight end spot, get him in line a little bit. I mean, he actually does have decent coverage ratings, but I don't really like him in the secondary. It's 6'5", 227. Although he might be a higher overall than what we currently would have at free safety, but we're going to roll with Omar Wilson there instead. What about Albert Brown? I guess we don't really need two receivers, do we? Two more receivers. We already signed one. Only 68 spec catch. 81 route running, though. 72 catching traffic. 72 catching. Carrying at 88. 69 juke. 71 spin. The trucking very low, though. I was really hoping for higher trucking from someone who's 6 foot 236. 61 strength. Does he have any blocking? Could he play fullback maybe? And he does have blocking. He has 65 pass, 68 run, although only 33 impact. So I think he's someone we maybe groomed to, take over for Josh Terry as the fullbacks next year. Would be a 68 overall fullback. And I think that's what we're going to do here with Albert Brown. We'll put him at fullback and kind of keep him in that Josh Terry role. And then we'll put Tommy Washington at receiver. Now, lastly, there's Waylon Douglas, who we actually didn't even sign. We were recruiting him in season a little bit, kind of pulled out on him. Two-star athlete at JUCO, so he's going to come in as a sophomore and probably best project as a D-end, a D-tackle maybe with a 79 speed, 72 strength. So he'd be a very good athlete there on the D-line, but more so probably on the offensive line, which is where he's highest rated. I think actually 67 at D-tackle, 68 at D-tackle, and 69 at center, 67 otherwise along the offensive line. But like we said, someone we didn't even end up signing ourselves. The computer just kind of threw him in. So we're just going to throw him at tight end. We don't really need him at D end. He's only a 54 overall tight end, but if you go over to his blocking and you like the size at 6'5", 250, 79 speed, 72 strength, awareness very low, and the catching non-existent, just 40, 43 for spec, 46 catching traffic. So obviously a project, but being that he's a sophomore, maybe by the time he's a senior, he develops some semblance of catching traits. Because if you go over to blocking, you really like this, 77 pass block, 76 run block with 76 impact. So he can make an impact as a tight end, I think. Even if the catching improves just, little by little going into his senior year, maybe that will benefit us. But we really do need to add another tight end, which we failed to do. So even though he's only a 54 overall tight end, not someone we really wanted to sign, but we'll throw him at tight end instead. Like I said, we don't need him at D end. We already said we have a lot of D tackles. So just an extra guy who, will maybe take over for Mike George once George moves on after this season. So that'll do it for position changes. And Lawrence Jackson, I might look around the country and see if there's a team needy of a quarterback in the region, in the region of the same as ours, Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, somewhere over there. So maybe get him a starting job, because I do just plan on getting Jason Smith, this redshirt freshman. I want to get him some snaps for sure, especially with that dynamic athleticism. So Lawrence Jackson, I think he could have had a very good career, but we ended up just bringing him and Walker in the same recruiting class, and Walker just took over as the guy. So we'll look around. Maybe Stanford, where Herbert Wright ended up, maybe they need a quarterback. And maybe Lawrence Jackson can be that guy. But that's, like I said, that's it for position changes. And now we're going to move on to training results. After training results, we see we have 2 players at over 90 overall. So for the first time, we do have a 90 overall player, I believe, Greg Walker and Justin Hill, each at 91. Both fourth-year seniors, part of our year 2 recruiting class. Bobby Mark is +8 up to an 89, and he still has another year. So another year of developing at center. He'll probably go up to like a 95 or so going into his fifth year of eligibility. Lawrence Jackson goes up to an 86. It's a rough situation having 2 seniors this high on the roster. Robert Williamson goes up to an 86. Antonio Carr, McBride each at 85. Aaron Clark up to an 83. Henry, Alexander, Pope, Price on 82. Now we'll just go position by position, check it out a little bit more. So Jason Smith is going to have 90 speed, 80 agility, 91 acceleration. Those each get 1 point boost. 97 awareness for Greg Walker, 76 speed, 75 agility, 78 acceleration. So, not an overpowering athlete, but definitely manageable back there under center. What's the arm at now? Throw power goes up 1 to 81. The accuracy at 87 goes up +3. You like to see that. What about Smith? I should have checked that while we're here. And Smith accuracy goes up to an 80 with 81 throw power at running back. And it's so close here. Obviously, McBride and Alexander, we're going to try and feature them as the 1-2 punch and mix in Craig Jones as the change of pace back. Each of these guys get +6, except Alexander, who gets +5, and he missed a few weeks, so maybe that kind of played into it a little bit. Sam Manning and Michael James, each decent running backs, although just crowded back here. But once Alexander moves on after this season, we'll be able to get them some more action in their final season. Josh Terry, a +5 up to a 77 overall fullback with 93 speed. That got 2-point boost. Good strength, agility, acceleration, awareness, all good. Break tackle at 79, trucking at 88. Spin at 88, juke at 85. This guy is just dynamic. 87 spec catch, 80 route running. What about the blocking? And those didn't get too big of a boost. 64 pass block, 64 run block, 69 impact with a 72 release at receiver. So Coleman is the top guy. I'm sorry, Pope is the top guy overall-wise, even though Coleman's kind of been ahead of him on the depth chart, both in the same recruiting class, but Coleman played from year 1. Pope was a redshirt, and maybe that redshirt year did him well. A lot stronger than Coleman, better size, higher awareness, but not as good acceleration. Catching, Pope at 88, 91 spec, 94 catching traffic, 86 route running. So Kenneth Pope definitely looks to be the better player here to Coleman. And in limited sample size last year, 11.9 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns on 20 catches. Coleman had over 500 receiving yards. Anderson here, I kind of like him as the number 4. I think Washington will probably be a top 3 receiver for us with Bonner back there as well. We'll try and get he and Anderson some playing time. At tight end, Jack Mason goes up to an 80, pulling away here from Craig Watkins. Want to check out the blocking more than anything. 76 pass block for Mason with 78 run block and 84 impact block. I love that from Jack Mason. Craig Watkins, a good receiving threat as the backup. Left tackle Rick Kent goes up to a 74. So Roger Cook at 77 overall, still the better player. Marquise Cole up to a 74. 83 strength. Only 74 pass block, but 84 run block. And we do run to the left side primarily. So it's good that we have him on the left side with Richard Walker over here on the right side, up to a 74 overall, as he's the dominant pass blocker. 85 now, only 72 run block, only 73 impact. At center, we saw Bobby Marcus up +8. What are his blocking traits at? 87 pass, 91 run, 83 impact. And that right tackle, Justin Hill, up to a 91. Todd Kemp, maybe going to take over the following season at right tackle, up to a 72. One of our higher priorities last recruiting cycle. Not a good pass blocker, just 73, but the 83 run block, 73 impact. And you love Hill here. 93 pass block, 87 run, 90 impact there at right tackle. Antonio Carr up to an 85. Far and away our best defensive lineman, especially at end. Brigham and Edwards here. Edwards, we just transitioned to D-end. He's now up to 252 pounds. I think we'll mix all these guys, even Gaines over here at left end. I think we'll mix all these guys in at right end a little bit. Brigham looks to be the better player so far, but Edwards, he gets a nice boost, a little faster than Brigham. Brigham's a little more strong. 85 hit power for Brigham. Pass rushing, they're pretty much identical, although Edwards has a 77 block shed. Higher pursuit from Brigham, so Edwards even has that coverage, 69 man coverage coming over from linebacker. So all these guys kind of have their own strengths, although Gaines not a good athlete. I think he was just a 2-star out of Milwaukee. Kept him in city. 76 power move, 75 block shed. At D tackle, Witherspoon, of course, is going to be the guy. Then we'll mix in Troy Walker, maybe even John Daniels a little bit, redshirt sophomore. And that D tackle we just signed, I think Jeff Thomas. So we do have a pretty nice rotation at D tackle. And Witherspoon, the only upperclassman, so it's going to get very strong here in the next year or two, along with our ends, although we are going to lose Antonio Carr. So more of power move guys here with Witherspoon and Daniels. Walker, not really a pass rusher, but has that 81 block shed, only 71 pursuit though. So Walker and Daniels, they're decent. I kind of forget what I think Thomas is more of a pass rusher, so that kind of works out to our benefit in that rotation. Jonathan Leak and Jimmy Fisher both up +4. Leak will probably be our starter at left outside linebacker, but as I said earlier, we don't run too many 3 linebacker sets. Although I think this year we're going to try and run a little more 4-3 and 3-4 than we did last season. Carter up to a 78, and Bobby Price +5. I think the most growth out of any of our linebackers coming off an All-American season. 92 speed. Like, he's faster than our safeties right now. At corner, Robert Williamson up to an 86 now for his senior season. The all-time leader in interceptions with 8. 3, 2, and then 3 this past season. Aaron Clark going to be a starter at corner. And the more I thought about it, the more I'm bummed that we didn't pour more points into Jansen there in recruiting. I think bringing him in would have given us dynamic corners for the next few seasons. Derek Perkins up 5. And I don't know if he plays over Carroll or not. I think he does project better in the slot than Carroll does. Carroll probably better on the outside with 6'3" size, but we'll figure that out. What are all their coverages at? So most of these guys are better man corners, to be honest. I mean, Clark just one better than he is in zone. 94 man, 93 zone. Williamson, 92 man, 93 zone. Carroll, 87 man. Press, pretty good for the most part, although James Williams down here only at 69. Williamson at 91. Clark at 88. So I think Perkins, especially, he was about to transfer out. I think we got to definitely have him in a starting role. And Mike Carroll will mix in as well. What's his tackling? Could he get in that safety a little bit? Not that good of a tackler, but he does have the highest hit power, actually, of all these guys. 54 block shed. 72 block shed from Williamson. You'll love that. Very active run support corner. Omar Wilson up to a 73. A good athlete. Our top priority last recruiting cycle. 71 zone, 80 press. So I don't know if we don't really feel comfortable with him as a starter, but we'll mix in some other guys. We'll probably throw Jason Taylor out there a little bit, even though he's not the fastest player. But Mark Henry up to an 82. Very good last year. Probably our best defensive back. Most consistent, at least. And Fred Castillo up to an 81 at punter. Kick power at 83 now with 81 kick accuracy. Now we're at cut players. And at this time last year, ending this phase, we were at 63 players. Now we're actually over our allotted roster size at 73 out of 70. So we'll kind of go down the line here. And this is kind of where I divvy up what we're going to need next season as well. So might have heard the pen click there. So 2 seniors at quarterback. We have Smith, going to be a 3-year starter once he hits his redshirt sophomore season. So probably only 1 quarterback next year, even though we are losing 2. We also have Martin Diggs down here, probably going to be the backup to Smith after this season, unless we bring in a higher caliber guy. A bunch of upperclassmen here at running back, kind of how our backfield has been. All these guys have been in the same year. Our backfield before this, it's Storm Norwood, Dexter Dowling, Tyson Bolt, all those guys, Theo Briggs. We kind of mixed them all in. They all came in at the same time, kind of like all these players. So Alexander, the only one we're going to lose. We do have 1 freshman, so maybe one running back, probably just to equip us when we're going to lose 4 players the next year with all these juniors. So definitely want to bring in at least one in this class. At fullback, we're set. We have Albert Brown. We're actually Ken Cut, Mitchell Gray. He was added to the roster back in year 1. We needed 2 fullbacks on the roster, only had 1, so they added him. We can now take him off. We're well equipped here, and maybe the best fullback backfield in the nation. At wide receiver, going to lose Coleman after this year, so CJ Saria, he actually went up a decent bit after redshirting. So maybe just one receiver in the next class. Tight end, definitely need a tight end. We're going to lose Mike George and then Mason and Watkins the following year. And like we said with Douglas, kind of just an added guy. We don't really expect too much from him, but we just added him there, an experiment, and we'll see how he progresses over the next couple seasons. I don't think we're really going to lose any offensive linemen. We have a few redshirt juniors, 1 senior, so we're going to lose 1. So maybe like 1 tackle, 1 interior lineman. At end, we're going to lose Carr and Horn. We didn't even sign him, a 1-star, only 51 overall. Sorry, you're not making it. So we'll have 4 D ends after this season, all underclassmen. Actually, Brigham will be a junior, so probably 1 D end in this next class. At D tackle, we're going to just go ahead and cut Dustin Lee. Didn't even make it to campus. Something came up. He wants to stay in Canada, go to a university over there. Jeff Thomas, the 14th ranked D tackle. He does have that pass rusher tag. So we're pretty well equipped at D tackle as well. 4 underclassmen here. So unless like someone really stands out in recruiting that's interested, we probably don't even have to go for a D tackle quite yet. Linebacker, we're not the most talented here, but we're only going to lose 1 senior, so maybe just 1 linebacker, 1 or 2 linebackers. Now going down to corner, we're going to lose Williamson and Clark, so that'll leave us with 4. We also have Thomas. We could always move back to corner if we wanted. Probably need a safety. Oh yeah, we want to cut Ryan Jacques. He was not a player we signed ourselves. Dominic Green, I'm still like so undecided on him with that 78 speed. 85 man though, 85 zone. Maybe in a 4-2-5 we get him on the field a little bit. 89 pursuit, really good traits. So I think we got to mix him in. Jason Taylor is kind of a similar player, although a better athlete, probably not as good in coverage. So for corners though, probably want to go for at least 1 or 2 corners, and then maybe 1 safety. At kicker, we're set for the next few years with Hunter Kraft, and then we do need to bring in a punter, or at least look for one. I mean, that's not really a priority. We still have another year of Castillo, so we actually don't even need to look at a punter. So how many spots does that leave us with? We have 1 excess spot, only at 69 out of 70. And now at this point, I kind of just divvy up all the seniors we're going to lose and see how many roster spots we're going to need to fill. So 4 up here, 5, 6, 7 after Price, 8, 9 after Alexander, 10, 11, 12. So really not many seniors on this team. But following this season, we're probably going to lose a huge class. So that's kind of how it's been. 2 years of, not losing many, not bringing many in. And then after that 2 years, we have a 2-year span of where we were going heavy recruiting. And then it kind of trails off after that. So we'll see how it goes. So that's 12. So that's really 13 spots to fill. And when I was divvying up the positions we need to target, I think it ended up at like 12. So that falls in line with what we're going to be targeting in the recruiting cycle. And that's usually how it goes. Also, I forgot about Garrett Marshall. We got to cut him as well. So that even gives us an extra spot. And I think we're good from here. So we're going to go ahead and simulate. And I think that will bring us into the preseason. So that's it, folks. That's the Year 5 offseason. We're now here in the preseason of 2018. And I can't wait to dive into the recruiting board. Of course, next episode, we're going to review everything here. We're going to recruit a whole recruiting board in depth. We'll look over our red shirts. We'll go over the depth chart. And, of course, we'll review our schedule. And then we'll jump into the season and preview it. We'll look at the top 25, the Heisman Watch, and all that good stuff to start next episode. So strap up, buckle up. We're going to get another season of this Marquette Dynasty and hopefully more down the road. So this is where I'm going to leave you, folks. Thank you so much for watching. It's a pleasure doing this Dynasty for you, for myself as well. I really enjoy it, and I enjoy the conversation. I enjoy the discussions, all feedback. I'm open. I love interacting. So, Joka, my boy, thank you so much for all your contributions to this dynasty. You've done more than you probably know. Shout out to Obscure Victories Gaming. Your series is awesome, man. Everyone listening, please go give him a subscription. He's killing it with his New Mexico Lobos dynasty there. So give him a follow, give him a subscription, and check out his dynasty as well. Also, shout out to Locino. I know you're lurking back there watching. So this is where I'm going to leave you folks. Like I said, as always, it's been real and be well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.